Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there?
Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that rave line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is undefeated in the SEC. Wait, we're in the Big Ten. What's our record? Oh, no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio, episode 602, coming to you on Wednesday, June 25th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football, looking at the preseason hype. If there is any, we're going to talk about it, talk about what people are saying about the Trojans going into the 2025 season, and so much more. As always, you can follow us on social media at Rant of Troy, email us, rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227, Second Whisper and Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Dertol.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We're back. This is a big episode because there's just a lot of random things to talk about. We're basically surfing the web, surfing the preseason water cooler, if you will, to see what people are saying.
Yeah, just getting a feel for, what are they saying about USC going into this season? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it align with what we've been thinking?
I don't know.
What are the vibes? I think we're all vibes right now, looking at vibes.
Yeah. Vibes are the big question. Let's get right into it. Talk about some Big Ten predictions. We got two to discuss, Athlon and ESPN. Athlon has the Trojans 7th in the Big Ten. ESPN has the Trojans 5th. These are the schools ahead of SC according to Athlon, where USC is 7th. Yes or no if you agree on these schools being ahead? Penn State.
Yes.
Ohio State.
Yes.
Oregon.
Yes.
Michigan.
Maybe.
I would say yes. Indiana.
Maybe.
Fair. Illinois.
No.
Okay. Those are the 6 schools ahead of SC per Athlon.
I'm not going to say those are unfair to have ahead of USC.
Yeah.
I would argue that you could take Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and USC and shake them up and spit them out in any order that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
All of those teams have major question marks that if they answer them positively, will put them up there with the Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon group.
Yeah.
USC, if Jaden Mayaba is really good, boosts up there. If Michigan has a quarterback, boosts up there. If Indiana is able to replace Curtis Rourke, boosts up there. But there's so many questions about all those teams that, I personally would want to see USC ahead of all those teams and would create an expectation for USC to be ahead of all those teams. Is that the reality? From a USC perspective, it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't always play out because USC has a lot of questions to answer. And Michigan has a lot of questions to answer, and Indiana and Illinois both do too. So, very uncertain about that group.
Yeah, both Athlon and ESPN have Ohio State and Penn State 1 and 2. Athlon has Penn State first. ESPN has Ohio State first. I think the interesting thing here is, for me, there's definitely tiers, right? I think Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, collectively, I think we can all agree those are the top 3, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a tier. Then to me, Michigan is in its own tier. Like Michigan can either be in that top tier and it's a top 4, or they're in the next group of teams, which are teams who could beat anybody but also lose to anybody. And to me, that's Indiana, Illinois, SC,
Iowa,
Nebraska.
Nebraska
Like
aspires to that for sure.
Yeah, like I think I like how Athlon put it together, and I think that's where I would probably put it.
My argument against having Michigan in a tier of their own, is that we saw that Michigan is still very. This is a very solid roster, but will be dependent on what they get out of their quarterback. And I don't know that they've answered that question very competently this season. If Bryce Underwood is their starting quarterback, kid is incredibly talented, but true freshman quarterbacks are not reliable. This is why I don't want Hassan Longstreet to start at USC, because true freshman quarterbacks always come with growing pains, and you get lucky if you don't end up losing a few games with a true freshman quarterback just because they're not at that level yet.
Counterpoint, they had no quarterback last year.
Yeah, and what were they, 8-4?
Yeah, but they beat Ohio State, and to go from no quarterback to an inexperienced quarterback, I think is an improvement still, right? Like, I don't know. I guess what I'm going to say here is
it's certainly a more talented quarterback if Bryce Underwood is the guy.
I think to focus on SC here, 5th by ESPN and 7th by Athlon, I would say that they're both right, because to me, like we're talking about, like it's that tier of Indiana, Illinois, SC, Iowa, Nebraska. Put it in a bag, shake it, and throw out the tiles and see how they fall out. Like, any of those teams, I think, could be anywhere. Not to skip ahead in our little rundown here, but like the CBS has the best case, worst case scenario thing, and the best case there is 11-1, and the worst case is 5-7, and
I would even go so far to say that the best case, if you're going to say the best case is 11-1, I think you could easily say the best case is 12-0. Like, well, at that point, if USC is good enough to win all those other games, then maybe USC is good enough to beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. I don't know.
Sure, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, to me, like the most realistic, maybe not the best possible idealistic 12-0 sense, but like everything comes together and SC is as good as they can be and should be and all that stuff. SC is a 10-2 team that is at the top of that second tier, and they end up like 4th in the Big Ten. Right? Is that fair?
I'm scrolling through CVS's. I'd read USC's, but I hadn't looked at like the other teams in the Big Ten.
Right.
And I do think it's interesting that USC is the 11-1, 5-7. And there's Washington is 11-1, 5-7.
I mean, like,
Indiana is 11-1, 5-7. Illinois is 11.
I think this is taking the best case, worst case a little too literally. You know what I mean? Because, like, obviously that's the best case and the worst. Like,
well, but I mean,
12-0 and 5-7 is like that's just the spectrum.
But
you know what I mean?
For instance, Michigan's best case is 12-0. Assuming that Bryce Underwood lives up to the hype.
Sure.
I would push back and say, well, if Jaden Maiyava lives up to the hype, then 12-0. Like if Jaden Maiyava is anybody with a good quarterback, I would say that it is more bold to assume that Bryce Underwood can be undefeated at Michigan,
right? Than
any of the other sort of things that they're putting out there.
Let me put it this way: instead of worst case, best case. Let me put it as successful and disappointing.
Well, that's a whole other question because I have thoughts here.
It is there because to me, successful season, it would in that sense would be 10-2 or a very impressive eye test 9-3. And in that case, you are surely in the top of the second tier of the Big Ten in the sense of like, yeah, you might not be in the Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon tier, but you're at least playoff contender tier, which I think that's a successful season for what SC wants to put together. Disappointing season is anything less than I mean,
I'll jump in here. The wrong kind of 9-3.
The wrong kind of 9-3
starts the disappointing season talk for me.
To me, the wrong type of 9-3 is par. 8 wins and fewer is disappointing, given the schedule. Does that make more? Because you can't just go from successful to immediately disappointing, because there needs to be a par in there. You know what I mean?
Okay, any sort of 9-3 we can call par, regardless of what it looks like.
Sure.
But at this stage, I mean, I guess I'm grading this from the perspective of.
Hold on. The reason I think that we can make 9-3 some semblance of a 9-3 par is that this is the schedule in which SC does not play Penn State and Ohio State. They get Michigan at home, and Michigan is a team that I think is fairly the 4th best team in the Big Ten, but also one that is not locked into being 4th, right? And so the SC's toughest road game is at Illinois in September.
USC almost beat Michigan last year.
Yeah.
With at Michigan, with major question marks that came to become more of an issue down the line. I think USC, but I guess my argument for 9-3 is getting towards disappointment in the sense that if we look at this schedule, yes, there are some tricky games, I think, but if you told me that going into the 2025 season, year 4 under Lincoln Riley,
right,
that USC would be looking at a schedule and saying that losses to Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa, one of those teams would be sort of on the table.
Yeah.
In terms of projections, then I would be saying that there's a problem here. USC at this stage in the Lincoln Riley era should be in a stage where we're looking at Oregon and at Notre Dame and saying USC can split those two. Realistically, your goal to go into the season is to split those two.
Yeah.
Where right now, where we're realistically at, we're talking about this team as pencil in at Notre Dame and at Oregon as losses, which gets you to 10-2. I can accept the reality of the situation that you will find it very difficult, even if you're a great USC team, to go to South Bend or to go to Autzen and beat a Notre Dame and Oregon team that have the rosters that those teams have. So I'm not delusional. I'm not going to say that USC should be going in expecting to win those games. Certainly that would be very difficult. But after that point, after I acknowledge that the Notre Dame and Oregon on the road thing is just maybe can't be helped at this stage, I don't know that I'm willing to give ground on any other matchup. Well, see, which is why I say the wrong kind of 9-3, because if the 9-3 is, like you said, talking about 9-3 as the right kind of 9-3 would be you lose close to Notre Dame and Oregon, you play them tough, last minute game decided, and then you lose a fluky third game
at Illinois,
where fans are pissed off because there was a sketchy call at the end, and you get to look at it.
It's the game where there's an injury or whatever,
or something. When there's a very valid, relatively valid excuse,
right,
where you're talking about how that USC had that in the bag, and that's they got screwed over. If it's 9-3 where the third loss is they got screwed over and the other two losses are very close losses to top 10 teams, then I think we're not talking about disappointment. Certainly, because in that scenario, I would wager that a 9-3 USC under those circumstances,
a good 9-3 team is possible.
I mean,
is
it's certainly
fringe playoff
in the conversation for the playoff for sure.
You very well could be 15th and be out of it. Absolutely. But,
yes.
Yeah.
But you're not you're not unconsidered, right?
Yeah. And Sagar in the chat says 8 of the 12 teams had 2 losses before the playoffs. Clemson had 3. Let's hope for 10-2. Yeah.
Well, but remember, 10-2. If 10-2 involves Notre Dame, it doesn't. USC. If USC is in the Big Ten title game, then I would find it very likely that USC gets into the playoff at that point.
Yeah.
So 10-2 puts you in the playoff. 9-3 doesn't really. I mean, that now you're getting into you need stumbling from Oregon or Ohio State or one of those teams, which is certainly possible. I
think what makes the schedule it's so weird because in a lot of ways it's a very favorable schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly compared to last year.
Yeah, it's a schedule that is very polarizing in a sense of you have the very difficult games, Oregon and Notre Dame, right? Those are two teams that I think everybody is predicting in the playoff, right? Oregon and Notre Dame on the road. Those are very, very, very tough games, right?
The road schedule. I mean, this is an easier schedule than last year, but objectively, the road schedule is extremely difficult.
Yeah, Purdue should be a team that you should easily manage. Illinois and Nebraska are surely losable games because those are good teams on the road, and teams lose to good teams on the road. That's how college football works, right? But if you're a team that has true playoff aspirations, then you should be able to go into Illinois and Nebraska and still beat them, right? It's a weird situation where I almost feel 9-3 just is what's going to happen.
I mean,
in the sense of
in the Sark Kiffin era, every season we were sitting there going 9-3, 9-3, 10-2.
Yeah. And then the reality of it, going back to the CBS thing, their case for the 11-1 and the 5-7 best and worst case thing, the rationale for those two are that it all depends on Jaden Mayava, which. Yes. Yeah, obviously. Is he the Jaden Mayava in the first 3 quarters against Texas A&M? If so,
woof.
Then
Hassan Longstreet, come on down.
Yeah. If he's the Jaden Mayava on the last 2 drives against Texas A&M, the Jaden Mayava for those 2 really good drives against Nebraska, and a couple of those Notre Dame drives that were really nice. Yeah. I think that, 9-3.
I mean, and again,
you hope that you're competitive in the other ones, so maybe get to 10-2 or something.
And again, my argument will continue to be for as much of a roller coaster as the Jaden Mayava experience was at the end of that season, he was 3-1 as a starter. And that one loss came to a team that was in the national title game, and that Mayava had USC in the running in the fourth quarter. So,
he also threw 2 pick sixes.
Oh no, I am not. Trust me, I am not.
Right.
I am not saying that Jaden Mayava is a sure thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah,
Jaden Mayava, I think going into this season,
you live and you die by the Mayava.
Jaden Mayava is the most unsure thing that USC has had at quarterback that I can ever remember. Maybe you could argue that I'm trying to think.
Maybe you can make the case for freshman year JT Daniels or freshman year
JT Daniels, freshman year Barkley. But even those guys, I felt like I had more confidence that they'd be okay than I feel confidence that Jaden Mayava will 100% be USC starting quarterback from day one to the end, assuming that, assuming injuries and stuff don't play a role. So, trust me, Jaden Mayava is who the hell knows.
Kenny says 2013 was unsure.
Right, but 2013 was unsure, but not because it was because of the quarterbacks that were available to USC. Not that neither of those quarterbacks could have gotten the job done. I think this is a different situation where it's not that USC is in a quarterback battle or any sort of thing. It's that Jaden Mayava is basically in a quarterback battle with himself, and we have no concept of what he's going to be. All we know about Jaden Mayava is, number one, when he's horrific, he is horrific.
Yeah.
But also, he was 3-1 as a starter. Like his
Yeah.
if wins are a quarterback stat,
Which they
then
Yeah.
then Jaden Mayava should be filling us with a lot more confidence than he is.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that wins are a quarterback stat, and I do think that USC's defense had a lot to do with the Nebraska and UCLA wins, to be sure. And USC's defense certainly had a lot to do with keeping Notre Dame in range.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just so torn. I'm so torn because winners are winners. The thing that I can never quantify when it comes to quarterbacks, and this is very annoying for people because people want to be able to quantify why a quarterback is great and why a quarterback is not great. But I do believe in the it factor. I do believe in some quarterbacks just having that swagger, that vibe, that ability to make the plays when they matter most. And that the main difference for me between Miller Moss and Jaden Mayava, even though Miller Moss, front to back, tended to be a more solid quarterback more often when he was on the field, was incapable outside of that one miraculous sort of complete drive against LSU, was not capable of making the plays when USC needed him to make the plays. And the difference was that when USC needed Jaden Mayava to make the plays, in these games, outside of that Notre Dame, the pick sixes, he made the plays in all of those games to at least, give USC a shot. So, who the heck knows? I think the worst, getting back to like the schedule, I think the biggest problem for USC is, things are never, your expectations are never, best case and worst case. We can talk about what a best case looks like and what a worst case looks like. Realistically, more often than not, you're going to end up with a case that is somewhere in the middle, and you're sort of hoping that it is leaning towards best case, but it could also lean towards worst case. Mm-hmm. And my guess is that Jaden Mayava will be 50-50 of what he is, which is a quarterback who is capable of making the plays that win USC, that wins USC games, while also making the plays that will ensure that USC is not within range for him to go win games later on.
Well, I think you have to look back at SC last year too, and they were 6-6, and I think it's so difficult talking about last year because they were 6-6, right? At the same time, I know nobody likes to hear this. They're 6 plays away from being, I guess 7 plays, because there were 2 plays against Notre Dame away from being, I don't know, 11-1, 12-0.
My theory is that if Jaden Mayava is the quarterback, USC beats Minnesota and Maryland.
Yeah, but I think he probably loses another one along the way.
Suspect
I
suspect that USC doesn't go to overtime against Penn State if Mayava is the quarterback, and I'm not saying that in a sense that USC wins that game. I think it's far more likely that USC loses that game by more than they did.
I don't think you can sit here and say that SC would have won more games with Mayava. I don't think you can definitively say that.
I can't definitively say that, but I will say that.
Okay. I guess what I'm saying is, when you look at the schedule and you're like, okay, if the best case scenario for SC, like the realistic, successful best case scenario for SC is something like a Penn State chalk year, right?
Yes.
10-2, you play valiantly to Oregon and Notre Dame, but you just don't have the horses and you beat everybody else, right? If that's the case, which you offered that right now, you're taking that, right? Put you in the playoff.
Yeah.
You're taking it, right?
No.
Now, if that's the case, that does mean you have to be perfect against Illinois and Nebraska, which are 2 pretty tough road games, right? And I think that like perfection against the other 10 teams sounds a little daunting to me, considering this is an SC team that lost 6 games in each of the last 2 seasons. But I think the reason why you can sort of believe that it can happen is that They were so close last year. Down to a few plays in every single game.
The defense
and the
being
defense
slightly better
should be better this year. Like they should have.
Not even significantly better, just a slightly better defense.
Well, they didn't have Eric Gentry for most of the season.
Yeah, probably
last
also results
right?
in
like,
USC beating Maryland and Minnesota.
Yeah, the
and
defensive
maybe
line
Washington.
should be better. Like SC doesn't have to get a lot better to start turning those losses into wins, and I think that's helpful. Let's keep talking about Athlon here. Before we get to some more ESPN stuff. So Athlon has SC 29th nationally in the country. Which that seems fair. I think that if you put a gun to my head and said, where does SC rank? I would say somewhere between 18 and 30. Is that fair? Like that's where I would say. 18 and 35 maybe?
Yeah.
Like somewhere in that window.
I think you can easily make an argument for anywhere in that window, and I think it would come down to, honestly, it comes down to how optimistic are you about Jaden Mayava?
Yes.
And how optimistic are you about, or how much do you think that USC's defense will improve relative to how much you think USC's offensive line will stay pat?
I will say, in terms of the defense improving, last year we talked about that the defense would have to improve because they were playing better offenses. I do think that it's helpful that SC is missing the best quarterback in the conference, Drew Aller. Drew Aller, the best quarterback in the conference? I think we can say that, yeah? Yeah? You gotta come back to that?
I can't think of anybody else, but I feel like I'm missing somebody.
Yeah, so like SC's missing the best quarterback in the conference, the best offense in the conference in Ohio State. Obviously, Oregon's going to be great on offense. But, like, Illinois, not known for offense. Nebraska has potential with little Mahomes, but still needs to show that they can do that, right? Northwestern, Iowa, Michigan State, Purdue, none of those teams are going to necessarily test SC defensively the same way that, say, LSU did last year, the same way that Penn State did last year, right? And so the same way that Washington did last year at times, right? So I think the defense, I can pretty confidently say that the defense will be at least as good as it was last year, if for no other reason than the schedule is just slightly easier defensively.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, even if you don't take the personnel additions into account, which you should, the defense, the schedule easing up in terms of the challenges that this defense will face certainly certainly helps. I mean, not to like rag on Purdue and Northwestern, but Minnesota and Minnesota doesn't have isn't an elite team, but they had a decent offense. Like they had a running back and they had, the ability to score points.
Minnesota thoroughly with what's his face? Row the boat guy. What's his
PJ Fleck.
PJ Fleck thoroughly. PJ Fleck had a masterclass coaching performance in that game. It was like in a Madden or NCAA game where you're just gonna get into a rock fight and just win those things. He did that. Yeah.
Last year,
I don't trust Purdue and Northwestern to do those things.
Last year, the 3 of the 4 worst scoring offenses in the Big Ten. Michigan State, Northwestern, Purdue. USC didn't play any of them, and they play all of them now.
Yeah, they play all
That's
of them.
not to say that they couldn't possibly get better, but they're starting from a sub 20 points per game platform.
Right. Yeah. I think that helps. More on Athlon, Alicia, you wanna go over some anonymous coach rumblings?
Yeah, they do every year. Like they talk to anonymous coaches about each team. They did the Big Ten teams, and the anonymous coach talked about whether or not Lincoln Riley is able to create another elite quarterback. The quote here, I think the metric here should be how much that defense can improve both on the field and in recruiting. I think they take a jump this year because they're bringing in more talented players to a proven system. both the transfers and the freshman Jakeem Stewart will make the defensive line better. That's what gets lost about USC teams that won big. They were killers in the front seven. That's been missing, which is very true. This is why I always push back on, like, I get so annoyed at, like, the Hollywood Pete Carroll era sort of tag that USC got. Like, yes, USC was incredible at skill positions, but USC's defensive and offensive lines were full of All-Americans. Like,
Not just All-Americans too, but like
defensive front seven too.
It really was the brick and mortar thing. Like,
yes.
For every Ray Maluga you had a Dallas Sarts, you had an Oscar Lua.
Your weakest link on those
Kaluka
defenses
Mayava.
might be the best player on some of the USC defenses that USC's had in the past 5 years.
For every Taylor Mays, there was a Kevin Ellison.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
The other quote on this from an anonymous coach was, if you assume Mayava continues to build a comfort level, they'll be better for it on offense. But watch the defense. If they take the next step, we're talking about a team that can go in and play with the best programs in the nation again. And I think that's true. Like, I think that a lot of this for me, the pendulum swings on two factors. Number one is that the quarterback play is sufficient. Not even exceptional, just simply sufficient.
Yeah.
And number two, it's that the improvement of the defense significantly outweighs any expected step backs for the offensive line, because I personally believe that USC's offensive line will take a step back this year, because I do not trust offensive line transfers, and USC has too many of them on this line that they're relying on. So I am not going to assume that USC's offensive line will be getting better this year. I am aiming for par from last year, and last year wasn't exactly great, but they were fine. Certainly in the run game, they did enough. So to me,
SC was on a per play basis best rushing team in the conference.
My guess would be that USC should be able to rely on the rushing attack at the same level as they did last year. No like shade on Woody Marks. I love Woody Marks, but I think that USC has done a very good job of replacing the running back position, and I think that the run scheme just sort of is what it is and will be effective in the way that it is. So to me, it comes down to, is the quarterback play sufficient, and does the defense significantly outweigh whatever happens to the offensive line?
Yeah. You just have to keep moving forward. I think that the good thing for SC is that if the floor is last year's 6-6, it was a high floor for a 6-6 team.
Well,
but yeah, you got to the idea, going back to the anonymous quote, that like, if they can take the next step, we're talking about a team that can go in and play with the best programs in the nation. Like, I think it's helpful that SC could play with anybody last year. They couldn't beat everybody. They certainly, struggled with that. They went 6-6 in the regular season. Should have lost the bowl game, but they pulled it out of their ass, right? But they were competitive in all those games. But you can't be competitive in every game, because there are games that you need to just flat out dominate. They didn't dominate the teams that they should have dominated, and they couldn't finish off the really good teams that they were competitive against, like Penn State and Notre Dame.
The issue is that, like, I think we would all agree that last year's USC offense was one of the more disappointing offenses that USC has had in terms of productivity.
Yeah.
That offense still averaged 30.2 points per game, which was 5th in the Big Ten. So USC was a top half offense. Like, I would say last year's offense should be USC's floor under Lincoln Riley, right? Offensively?
Yeah.
So if that's USC's floor under Lincoln Riley, and they were top 5 in the Big Ten in terms of scoring offense, when you factor in that USC's scoring defense was 12th in the Big Ten, 24.1 points per game. If USC defensively rises up into a top 5 Big Ten defense, which would be akin to like Oregon, Iowa, sort of in the 16, 17, 18 points per game range, if that's what USC is cooking with. Like, Minnesota was 16.9 points per game. Defensively, Iowa was 17.8 points per game. If USC is up there with those teams, then we're talking about a USC team that, if we're saying should be at worst 5th offensively and is top 5 defensively, this USC team is not losing the games that we're talking about as potential. Like this USC team with a defense at that level does not lose to Illinois, does not lose to Nebraska, does not lose to Iowa,
Maryland.
I mean, certainly doesn't lose to Maryland or Washington or any of those.
Yeah.
But like my point being is that if USC's defense is at that, follows the progression that you want to see the defense follow, then the realistic situation here is that 10-2 is more than achievable, like way more than achievable in that sense. The problem is that USC hasn't been able to rely on a defense at to that degree since. I mean, I'm looking back. When was the last time USC averaged under 20 points per game allowed on defense? Not within
probably 2008.
Not within the current CFB stats.
The other thing is, like, when you look at, like, I don't think they need to average under 20 points per game. Because
averages are tricky.
Yeah, how many? 19 teams held teams to under 20 points per game last year. Yeah, a lot of those were in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's
Michigan, Oregon, Iowa, Minnesota, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State. So, and Notre Dame's at 4th too. So, like, yeah, I think because of the teams that you're playing, I think that certainly maybe you can get a little bit of a boost there. But if you hold teams to 20 points per game, and so if the defense takes a step forward and the offense, because we can say that was the floor under Lincoln Riley, because it was the worst offensive season he's had as a head coach. If that's the case, then they should. Transposing last year to this year, you should be able to go 9-3 at minimum.
2013 USC had a defense that was 21.2 points per game.
Yeah,
that's the lowest.
Well, what was it in
a long
the COVID
time.
year? COVID year defense was pretty good.
Hold on, I'm trying to find.
They had that guy. What was his name? Hufanga?
Oh yeah, 2009. USC had allowed 19.8 points per game. That was 22nd out of 120 FBS teams. So like again, like it's been a long time now. It's been over a decade that USC has had a defense, and obviously offenses have changed, and the 2020 USC defense was 26 points per game, but that was, I think, heavily weighted against certain games.
It's SC's got to improve there, definitely. ESPN, the FBI has SC 19th nationally, projected record of 8.3 and 3.9. I think that's fair for where the computers are saying, especially when the computers have to factor in the last two seasons.
Yeah, the number, I think USC is such a difficult. I mean, most teams at this point with the transfer portal are such a difficult.
We had talked about
computers.
Last year with FEI.
The pride of FEI.
SC it's the last three seasons, all three under Lincoln Riley, has been almost identical in terms of FEI. Just about anywhere in the 16 to 18 range nationally. So that's why I think, that even makes it more difficult for computers, because SC was basically the same in terms of metrics, and they had a regular season that was 11-1 and a regular season that was 6-6. And they essentially performed the same. Mind you,
the difference?
The difference was the offense was bad when the defense was better, and it evened out to be the same.
Well, they also had a quarterback that was capable of winning games when USC needed him to win games.
Yeah.
Big help.
And they forced turnovers in 2022, something that they struggled to do the last 2 years. All right, percentages from ESPN, FPI. Bowl eligibility, 93.8%. Yeah, sure.
Good Lord. Yeah, if
When-
we're talking about bowl eligibility, I'm going to be pretty not happy.
SC's chances to win the Big Ten, 4.2%. I think that sounds fine. Like 1 in 20, like that. That's not obviously you want higher, but I'm saying like that sounds about what I would guess it.
The
to be.
problem is that the percentage chance that a team like Penn State or Ohio State or Oregon wins the Big Ten is just so much higher than anybody else in the Big Ten. That 4.2 is whatever.
We're talking like 25, 25, 25, and then everybody
and then
else has
everybody
like,
else.
Yeah.
5
and under. 21% chance SC makes the playoff. I
see. That's what's interesting there. Like that's pretty high.
It is and it isn't. Like top 12 is all you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I think it's very. I think SC can be a team that's in the top 25. Right?
Should be.
Yeah. But
again,
right. But what I'm saying is like, if we're going back to the FEI stuff, if SC is true to how they've played, and they are 17th in the country, it is hard to go from 17th to 11th. You know what I mean? That's where I'm saying the difference. And that's the difference between 10-2 and an impressive 9-3.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like impressive 9-3, you can still be impressive and still miss out on the playoff because
you're 17th, 16th, whatever.
Yeah, you should have beat Illinois in that game that went to overtime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to College Football News. Has the win total at 8. Again, for I think these big national projectors, I think that 8 is going to be pretty much the standard number. I think I can understand why the national media is reluctant to go to 9-3.
Well, and because as we've talked about, like I think you can easily pencil in 2 losses, and then you have to realistically ask yourself, is USC going to win out against the likes of Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa? And I think that it would be reasonable to say that of those, let's throw in UCLA as well, of those teams, Michigan. Michigan's the 4th team I was thinking of. Of those 4 teams, if USC had 2 losses among them, that would feel perfectly reasonable in terms of a prediction if USC split that group. So, that's how you get to 8 wins.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Let's get to talking about players. I don't have, I can't find you have the ratings, the individual player ratings from EA College Football. We'll talk about that in a minute, but.
Oh, I can pull those up.
Yeah, you pull those up. We'll talk about the 3 players I think that are getting the most preseason buzz for the Trojans. Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, and Kamari Ramsey. And I think Kamari Ramsey is SC's best player, and Mekhi Lemon is right up there too, so that makes sense. Jacoby Lane statistically was pretty damn good last year. 12 touchdowns, which was really good for a guy who was basically the 3rd or 4th receiver at times, given playing time and all that kind of stuff. Mekhi Lemon ranks 55th in the country in their overall CFB player rankings. Pro Football Focus has him as wide receiver 1 in the 2026 NFL draft. That seems pretty good.
I'd say that's a little bold given his size, but just because when you get to NFL evals, like they do care about those sort of raw size situations. But their argument there is just that his skill level is so high that he's an elite separator. He's elite against single coverage. He's just a really, really all-around great wide receiver that will play beyond whatever measurables he has in terms of speed or size or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of makes a lot of sense, even if I wouldn't put money on him being wide receiver number 1, but I think that he could have a season of productivity that would befit a wide receiver number 1 in the NFL draft.
Yeah. Jacoby Lane, 118th in CBS's player rankings in the country. ESPN's Jordan Reed ranked him at number 1 among the 2026 NFL draft wide receivers, in part for all the things you didn't say about Mekhi Lemon, which is size.
Jacoby Lane is
He fits the profile.
Is
right?
exactly the profile of player that I could see rising up draft boards to be wide receiver 1, simply because he has the measurables. I did think that Jordan Reed, again, we talked a lot about Maava and the defense and the uncertainty about those. I think the wide receiver group, I think we can be very confident in what Mekhi Lemon will bring. Jacoby Lane becoming the elite receiver that he could be would change a whole lot of my calculus for USC's offense, because having two of those receivers that are at that level just makes life so much easier for the quarterback, that all of my worries about Maava become less and less and less, because it's a lot easier when you can just throw the ball up to Jacoby Lane.
Here's something about Jacoby Lane. Could you see a season in which he had 3 touchdowns this upcoming season?
Yes.
Could you see a season in which he had 15?
Yes.
Right?
And that's what Jordan Reed, this is his evaluation. Toughest player to rank, Lane.
Yeah.
I have the 6'4", 195-pound redshirt sophomore ranked higher than everyone and will continue to reside on that island. But he is a polarizing prospect who has many scouts needing to see more. Despite 12 touchdowns last season, Lane only had 528 receiving yards and was held below 50 yards in 8 of USC's 13 games. There isn't a true wide receiver 1 in the class yet, though, so with a bit more consistency, Lane has the opportunity to rise and be the first receiver off the board.
Yeah.
Consistency is the question. It's the watchword for Jacoby Lane.
If Lane plays to his potential, absolutely, I think that you can see him in sort of Biletnikoff discussion. Obviously, it's very tough. There were a couple really good freshmen last year, like the guys at Ohio State and Alabama, but like Jeremiah Smith. But I don't think it's just, would I bet on that? No.
And that's
but it's possible.
That's the big question is I don't think we can look at Jacoby Lane and expect a 2021 Drake London type season. But I certainly think that if Jacoby Lane is coming out and becoming fully formed Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
Because remember, Michael Pittman leading up to 2019 had not been uber productive.
Right.
He had 404 yards in
he did have some injuries early on, but yeah.
Yeah, he led the team in 2018, but it was
different
758
situation,
yards. Yeah, totally different situation.
Because this is a receiving core that could use Jacoby Lane to stand up and be the superstar, even alongside Mekhi Lemon, right?
Well, you need Jacoby Lane to go back. You need Jacoby Lane to be your Dwayne Jarrett, and you're perfectly fine with Mekhi Lemon being your Steve Smith.
I guess what I'm saying is Michael Pittman was still splitting reps even in his early years with Deontay Burnett and Tyler Vaughns and
Amon-Ra St. Brown
and Juju Smith-Schuster at one point, all those guys. You know what I mean? It was tough. It was tough for him to get the run that, say, Jacoby Lane has had, at least as a sophomore last year. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Kamari Ramsey, Matt Miller ranked him number 3 among safeties in next year's draft. Jordan Reed has him at number 2. Joe DeLeon of A to Z Sports says, Kamari Ramsey needs more first-round love, plays with fantastic range and instincts, has the length to make impactful plays on the ball as well. Yes, I think that if people watched Kamari Ramsey play in and play out like we did last year, they would absolutely fall in love with him. Yes.
I think that if USC's defense is really good next year, a lot of the emphasis will be put on the improvement of the front seven.
Yeah.
But if USC's defense is anything approaching elite next year, it will be significantly because of what Kamari Ramsey brings to the table.
Yeah.
Kamari Ramsey is as close to Talanoa Hufanga as we've seen in a while.
Hufanga's year in 2020, was it 2020 or 19, where he had that string of having a turnover in 4 or 5 straight games?
Yeah.
That stuff is impactful, and you put stuff on the stat sheet, and people are forced to take notice of you. If Kamari Ramsey's able to do that this season, yes, people are going to have to focus on him. I think it's tough because the things that made him so impressive this past season were not necessarily things that would be in the stat book. he's a damn good tackler. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And part of that is because our bar is low when you look at like how bad SC has been at tackling, and here comes this guy who simply tackles, and you're like, oh my God, this is the greatest tackler since.
What a world.
Yeah.
Okay, I've pulled up these are the leaked player ratings. These are not official.
Yeah.
We don't know how much these will change, but Mekhi Lemon is a 90. He has 91 speed.
Yeah.
Jacoby Lane is an 89. He has 89 speed. DJ Harvey is an 88. That's the cornerback transfer in. Kamari Ramsey is an 88. Eli Sanders, the transfer running back, is an 87. Lake McCree is an 87. Wayman Jordan, the transfer running back from the JUCO ranks, is an 87. Jaden Mayava is an 86. And somebody asked about the Mayava speed.
About his speed.
Trojan Fight, how do we feel about Mayava's speed rating in the game? 84, I think, is what it was. I think that if I was when the College Football 26 comes out, and I will be starting to scout quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff, if I found a quarterback that had Jaden Mayava's ratings, I would be quite happy with them. Do I think that in reality Jaden Mayava plays like a quarterback with 83 speed and 85 acceleration and 86 change of direction? I do not. I do not think that Jaden Mayava realizes that he has those stats.
Well, this is hard because, like, to me, the spectrum, and this is just because guys are all over the board compared to receivers. Like, all receivers are fast. Are they really fast, or are they just fast? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not all quarterbacks are fast. Some of them are slow as hell, and this is why there's a big range, right?
In the game, 83 is sufficiently fast for a quarterback.
Anything in the game, anything over 80 is someone who can move their feet and scramble.
Mm-hmm.
Anything below 80 to, say, like in the 70s is someone who could maybe pick up a first down every now and then if you need it. Anyone below that, never have them do anything. Just keep them in the pocket, right?
Yeah, throw the ball.
And I think that's fair. I think 84 seems fair because Mayava is someone who, if he wanted to get going, he can get going. Is he as fast as Lamar Jackson? No. Is he a Jaden Daniels? No. Is he a runner? No, he's a scrambler. Runners and scramblers, two different things. I think he's a guy who could scramble. I don't think he's a runner, and having 84 speed as a scrambler is fine.
I think my point
what do you
here.
think Darnold's speed would
Well,
be
that's the
like?
thing. I don't think
Darnold's speed would be like 80.
That's
right?
that's my point. I think Jaden Mayava is probably faster than Sam Darnold. But again, this is where I think that this is an area where Jaden Mayava could get a lot better really quickly if Jaden Mayava got more comfortable being a scrambler. Because Darnold was not as fast as Mayava can be. Darnold is a much better runner, much better sense of when to go, how to pick his spots, pick his spots, be elusive, and all that kind of stuff. And I think Mayava has those tools in his bag. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't look. He looks very uncomfortable with that. USC should be able to run read options with Jaden Mayava.
They did it against Nebraska,
but he looks so not comfortable doing it.
Really stiff.
Yeah. Okay, so just to roll through the rest of the like better rated players: Eric Gentry in 84, Keyshawn Silver in 83, Brian Jackson in 81. That's the running back. Anthony Lucas 81, DeCarlos Nicholson 81, Elijah Page 81, Marcellus Williams 81. Everybody else is under 80, including Bishop Fitzgerald, the transfer safety, who's a 79. Mm-hmm. Prince Strawn, the transfer wide receiver, who's 79. Cam Fountain is 79. Let's see who else is. Jod Jarrett is only a 77. You'd like to see that change. Braylon Shelby is a 77. You'd like to see that change. Yeah. The transfer center, Jean-Ray Reed, is 77.
Do we know what... why is his name escaping me for the moment? 23, linebacker.
Oh, Desmond Stevens?
Yes, what's Desmond Stevens?
He's a 76.
Okay. What's his speed in the game? Do you know?
86.
Okay.
Which is,
fair.
fast.
Yeah.
For a linebacker at that stage. Yeah. I have one giant, massive, huge problem with the College Football 26 ratings for USC.
Uh-oh.
Massive problem.
Is it just the massive guy at linebacker?
No. USC's 3 lowest rated players.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you could maybe guess one of them, but you couldn't guess all 3. 2 of them because you simply don't really know their names.
Is one of them like Josiah Zabora?
No. The lowest rated player on USC's team is
Hank Pepper.
Hank Pepper, the long snapper.
Yeah.
Yes. Tight end Devin McDonough is a 63. I don't know if this is a created player. I don't know who this person is.
That is. Well, do you know a number?
47. Is that who would that be? Well, they wouldn't do the numbers.
They wouldn't do the number. Yeah.
No.
There's Devin McDonough is a long snapper. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
He's listed as long snapper.
Okay, even worse. 2
McDonough,
long
yeah.
snappers are McDonough at 63 and Hank Pepper at 60.
Yeah.
That means who is USC's lowest rated long snapper?
Yeah.
Zacharias Williams.
Yeah.
The wide receiver from Utah, a 64. Now, granted, he had very little playing time last year. He was not a super highly rated player. Like, I get it. If you didn't know anything about him, I could totally see how in a game where you're just slapping on ratings, you're just slapping on some ratings. But that is a travesty that should change quickly. I'm not saying like Zacharias Williams should be like a high 70s or anything like that. He should not be USC's lowest rated player.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be one of the incoming freshman linemen or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's Willie Washer at?
I don't think they're in the game yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. The game coming out in a couple weeks. Unfortunately, we'll be on vacation, but you guys will still be getting pods. We'll have those ready to go for you guys, even though input people saying, yeah, but you said you're going to be on last week, and then
Well, I mean,
last week
as we
there was quite literally a family emergency.
yes. So that,
And on top of that, we had made contingency plans last week.
for after this family emergency happened,
Yes.
we
made contingency plans with the special guest.
Yes.
And then the special guest bailed on the day of.
Mm-hmm. I mean, let's be fair. The special guest was sick and didn't want to get us sick.
The special guest was soft.
I mean, yeah, that's
Soft.
I mean, this is true.
Yeah. I hope the special guest is listening. He's soft. Yeah. All right. We'll be back next week. We personally won't, but we will at the same time. So we will see you guys then. As always, email us, ranttroy@fansite.com. Phone number 818-643-7227. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel, same all that stuff. Until then, we will see you.
See ya.
See ya.